everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you managed to just bump into this live the same way we actually bumped into, of just last minute, asked Amity to join me today. Thank you so much for joining me. And I just wanted to invite Amity, who's the resilience queen, to talk about resilience once again. And most importantly, because there have been so many myths and preconceived ideas that I'm facing every single day, like all day long. From the moment where I'm at the gym and I'm like completely dead, not wanting to finalize that rep, and like my coach is coming and be like, "Come on, Miss Resilience."
Yeah.
So so many startup builders who are just like stuck in the grind and just the hustle and not getting enough sleep and just going like night after night, just coffee after coffee. So I thought it would be great to have a catch up and redefine a little bit, what we mean by resilience.
Yeah.
So I mean, I like to start like asking you, what's your definition of resilience in your area?
I mean, operational resilience is like a very specific subset of resilience. We're kind of focused on like the strategy of building your operations and ensuring that there's a level of excellence and also scalability to what you're building. So yeah, I think my definition might vary from other people's in the industry, but like if I have a company and I know that it's resilient, I feel like I can confidently say that I understand like the components of my business, what's important and why. So then when things do go wrong, I can basically respond in the most meaningful way possible. It's not like chaos, it's not reactionary. I can be like sure and calm in myself and know that these are the steps I need to take to be able to get through the other side. So for me, it's really, I think, as an individual, I'm really about like equilibrium and balance and things like this. So that's my approach to resilience as well.
Mm. Yeah, this balance thing that often comes up. But I know it's also a kind of like red flag for some people when we talk about balance, because they just quickly think, oh, work-life balance thing. Like,
Yeah, I agree with you in that sense. I find this an interesting conversation because there's like such a lot of emphasis on work life balance. But I think I personally feel if you love what you do, then it's not really like you're working. So there's no need to have that balance. I think if internally you don't particularly love what you're doing or it's not something that like fulfills you and you need to have that break from that, then sure, that's when balance becomes important. But like I guess that's why I chose the word equilibrium over balance because they're two very separate things, right? Yeah, so I can understand why there's a little bit of like mixed feelings around this whole concept of balance.
yeah. Well, I think is it Jeff Bezos that speaks about harmony, isn't it? Like finding this harmony between like indeed your work life and bringing your family in the mix, and how everything can find its space. Um, but I think it's also the same when we talk about human resilience. It's like how founders can find that harmony as long as they put themselves and their health first, to be able to kind of continue doing what you love. It's just don't kill yourself in the process.
Yeah. I actually think the harmony piece is quite interesting as well. Like it's very similar in terms of if you have everything in separate components, it's much harder then to find that harmony between them. But if you find a way to incorporate things where they kind of work synergistically and they support one another, then it's much easier to have these kind of like high impact lives as an entrepreneur. But I think because we've been trained, maybe like socially or whatever it is, to always have everything in very separate separate components and compartments, it makes it a lot easier to find that harmony. So, yeah.
It's also, I guess it's also about like how we've been conditioned. Like there's been like this culture of hustle that has taken over the world, obviously, since like startups became a thing and a terminology, and it became about, chasing fast success and the capability as well to face and have fast success. Also made it so we'd kind of always try to find that shortcut to go faster, quicker, to get the reward.
I think like fast success actually isn't that common, right? If you look at majority of people who chase this path, success is not the outcome that they actually achieve. There's very few people in the world who have become successful quickly and been able to manage that. It's more of an anomaly than something that we see in the masses. So I do find it interesting that the startup ecosystem kind of promotes this behavior, but I actually feel a lot of this is driven from the like motives of the investors, right? They don't particularly care about the businesses, they don't particularly care about the business models, they don't particularly care about the founders unless they think that they can achieve this very small outcome that everybody's chasing. It's basically like hedging your bets or gambling. So at the end of the day, their motives are to reach quick success for quick returns, and they don't necessarily care about all of the things that happen in between. I mean, that's a very like blanket statement about investors, but the vast majority have this mentality. So I think, yeah, it kind of has created a system that sets many people up for failure, but all they do is kind of like promote the anomalies that have happened previously, and people take that for granted and like, oh yes, it's guaranteed, we can build quick, cut corners, not worry about the outcomes, and just get that money at the end of the day. But I don't necessarily feel like that's really common when you look at the statistics.
Yeah. And the statistics are like quite, I mean, obvious. I think, what is it, like 90% of companies fail in their first year?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very high. It's not just startups, it's like every business. It's very difficult. The first year is the hardest.
Yeah. And I think that's it. It's about how to find that the systems and have like operations that help you sustain that. Make sure that you have enough to go beyond your first year, your second year, your fifth year, and making sure that you have something that you can build on to, well, have sustainable return.
Yeah.
How is that? How do you see that happening then for the companies that are resilient? What are the ingredients for success?
I don't necessarily think it's ingredients, right? Like all of the companies that I've worked with that really embrace resilience and bring it to the core of their business, it becomes a strategy. So it's more like a mindset. It's something of continuous improvement, always looking for enhancements, trying to find the best ways to do things. And so I feel like a lot of companies intuitively do this from a product perspective. Some do it from a customer's perspective, but it's usually always from a product perspective. But the idea is like it's the same concept, right? And the companies that do this really well are always frequently iterating and making sure that they have incremental improvements on what it is that they have to offer. It's literally the same thing with resilience. It's like, okay, every time we gain a deeper understanding of our business, how can we apply this to ensure that we improve our operations? So I would say it's more of a mindset than a particular ingredient. And a lot of the businesses that I work with that do it really well, they're deeply curious about these improvements that they can have all the time, remaining strategic. So yeah.
I guess it's very much tied to like human resilience. Obviously, that's how like we work so much so well together.
Yeah.
But it's always like this parallel. Also, like the processes in organizations, they are built for humans by humans. And if the humans building them don't have that resilient mindset that is going to be looking for self-improvement continuously, this is where we're hitting a snag. It's just patching things up.
You're Frankensteining things together. Yeah.
And it's something I think it's something we find in marketing as well. We talk about Frankenstack in marketing, where you have like all these campaigns and strategies that are piling up, and the same way in operations. And that's the same way as well when it comes to human resilience, where you're just trying to push against everything else and not thinking, okay, how can I improve to get there, as opposed to just repeating the same cycle over and over again, expecting a
Mhm.
different outcome.
Mhm. We all know what that is.
We can spell it out, it's insanity.
Um, that's
But
so
yeah,
funny. So, in my office, it's actually now my mom's office, but I have a sign which is literally this. It's like, yeah, I feel like it's a very good constant reminder. You know, you can't have like new outcomes with the same perspectives. You always have to be open to like iterations. So, yeah.
yeah, yeah. You're saying that so well. It's really about not aiming for the same thing at the end. And if you want something different, then you need to do something different. And sometimes, well, luckily now we became more sensitive about failure and this idea of turning failure into an opportunity. And where I see it is always, well, you have a door that closes in front of you. And resilience is not about pushing through that door until it breaks, but it's actually learning to climb so you can go through a window. And it's really that. Like, how do startup learn to climb through a window today? Like, how can they nurture that mindset?
So I think it's like the very same mindset as when you actually trying to like, you're trying to build your business. You're literally just like throwing spaghetti at a wall to see what will stick, right? But you know that, okay, this piece of spaghetti is the one that's sticking, so I'm going to follow that way. It's the same concept in resilience, but instead, rather than just like literally throwing spaghetti, we look at our business, we understand the components, and we say, okay, like that helps to determine what is the successful piece of spaghetti. So rather than it being the closed door in front of you and you just like doing the same thing over and over again, you have that information from inside of your business to make those decisions and say, like, this is the path we're going to take now because we're informed, we understand our strengths, we can see where the business is going. I think the missing piece with a lot of startups is they don't have that clarity, and it's just like, I use a definition of like recipes all the time in food. You know how much I love food. So it's like you're just throwing ingredients in a bowl, you know, and you're mixing them together and you're getting that outcome. And that's great when you're little, but it's like to scale that and, you know, put more and more and more resources together, first it becomes wasteful. It's not scalable. You have no systems. You don't understand your strengths and your weaknesses. So it's like, then how could you ever see that window that could be just right there? So that's kind of like how we're teaching startups to look at scaling. Let's take a moment, let's pause, understand all of these components, let's organize them a little bit, and then you have that clarity to make the decision. Okay, let's not use this door anymore because it's locked, you know?
I love that. It's really like bringing it to self-awareness, isn't
It's the
it?
same in human resilience, though, right? It's like people, they may get really, really stuck by their surroundings around them. And it takes just a moment of like recalibration to find, you know, the steps forward. So, yeah, I think it's quite similar.
Hmm. Yeah, it's true. Because we say when it comes to human resilience and everything mindset, it starts with self-awareness. So,
Mm.
and whether it's understanding your limiting beliefs, whether it's understanding, the origins of your conditioning, or why you're thinking that way, or why you have that negative voice telling you that. And I guess it's really exactly the same parallel when it comes to the business you're building, is understanding the why, these ingredients, what's inside that bowl that is giving birth to that recipe and that outcome. I mean, that cake, because I know
Yeah.
you love cake, as opposed to it being just, okay, I'm just going to try the same mix without understanding what is in there.
I mean, that's typically why a lot of expansion fails, right? Because they're like, all of this goes here. And then you're like, not quite. So yeah, I think once you have that recipe, you can just like, you can cut it in place and change it and move it around and understand why certain things may be successful or not.
And we see that even like you mentioned this, like when we talk about expansion, whether it's of self, but also of like businesses, there is the global expansion that is still yet the thing companies are struggling with when it comes to going after a new market that you don't know at all. I mean, even myself, I'm facing it like digital nomading around the world. Each market like responds to different messaging, to different services. And it's like making them understand that the recipe that worked here doesn't take you there.
Yeah, so I think it's like for business in terms of product, it's less about like the product itself not working. So it's like the fundamental thing will still remain the same, but it's like the additional things that you just like literally spoke about. It's like, you know, the positioning of that product, how you would explain it, the pain points maybe. So like someone the other day we were having a conversation just about like localization of UI and UX, right? So this blew my mind though, because it's actually so true. And I think if we understood this in more detail, it would make sense to why certain successes and failures happen. So like, you know, the toolbar, and you have like we have the cog, right? In certain countries they would literally have no idea what this means, so you would need to put like scissors, or like instead of an ear you would need to use a microphone. So there's like this whole book around the localization of just the way that your interfaces and the way that people interact. Sizes of buttons in certain markets mean that it won't be clicked. And so I think like fundamentally your product would remain the same from like a framework and delivery perspective, but it's like the way that you then promote that, or for people to understand, it needs to be localized. So that's, I guess, the key difference between what we do in operational resilience. We're really looking at things from an operational perspective and how to have that continuity of services. And then you would have your supporting business teams look at all of these contextual things that you need to think about when you deliver to a new market.
That is super interesting. Because when you're looking at it from a Mangrove perspective, which is your SaaS business,
Yeah.
You're looking at the value, that core value, the component that is going to remain, but then to streamline all the rest that is not that important ingredient, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's like for instance, like if you're looking at maybe like a delivery company, right? They may be delivering products from A to B. So you know that this is going to work in each market, but you want to understand what are the core components of the user journey. So maybe we have parcel booking, we have the collection, we have the quote, payment, the actual transport, and then you might have like some aftercare stuff that you do. That's like a very generic user journey, right? That core element and all of the pieces in your business to deliver that from like operational. So that's like your human, your technologies, your third parties, all of that will remain the same. But then you have those additional supporting functions, which are like your marketing, your branding. So these things are still important, but what we look at is the core functionalities of delivery and making sure that those can always be operational. And then those additional things that you said about like, how does a product land in a market? How do we, you know, talk about the need for this or the pain points or the pricing? That's additional stuff that is still mapped, but it's not necessarily like your core components of your business.
I see. I think when it comes to human resilience, the core component is yourself, you know.
It's the machine.
It's literally, yeah, you're the product, and you need to still be standing to keep going. And as much as there are moving pieces, it's like protecting that core product and value, and then making sure that you adapt the rest, the approach, but also the care around yourself. And that's why it's like really so important when we look at the operations and making sure that founders have that nailed and make sure that they have visibility of everything that is happening in their business, but also that they don't lose sight on the fact that without them, for majority of the small startups, which have small teams, nothing functions, and that they need to protect that key resource and they need to make sure that it's still around.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same concept, right? Like, so as a founder, maybe you have like 50,000 tasks, right? But like, which of those are important? Human resilience teaches us a similar thing. It's like, how do I identify the core things that are like really, really important for me as a founder and as an individual? And these are not necessarily just like work related tasks. It's like, for me, for example, every morning I must do Mai Tai, and every morning at 6 a.m. I need to drink chai on my balcony. These are like the fundamental elements of my life, and without them I cannot do anything else in my day, you know? So it's not just always about outputs. It's looking at things and understanding what are the impacts of this, whether it's operationally from my side of the coin or from a human component, which is your side of the coin. It's still a similar framework. It's like identifying those really, really core components that you need.
Yeah. I think it's one coin at the end of the day, which is
I agree.
multifaceted. Yeah. I'm super grateful that you've taken the time out of your day, and I know it's pretty late. But I just wanted to give a shout out about resilience and in all its ways, humanly, operationally, and just give a little reminder that it's really not banging your head over and over again the same things, but taking that step back and looking at what can be improved, what can be changed and transformed in order to get to what I want to get to. Very grateful for you joining us today.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys, for dialing in live, and we'll see you soon.